The sign at Frontier Station's main docking port read, "Welcome to human space, where humans rule." Below it, in smaller lettering, all non-human visitors assume personal responsibility for damages, injuries, or death. Mike Bronson, veteran tour guide of 15 years, checked his wrist comp for the 1,000th time that morning. His final tour group would be docking in 30 minutes. After this one last excursion, he'd retire to that little habitat in the Procyon system he'd been eyeing. Quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, no tourists asking if humans really had evolved from primates, or if they could touch his beard for luck. The station's observation deck hummed with the usual controlled chaos. Humans in various uniforms rushed past, while the occasional alien visitor stood bewildered, usually clutching environmental regulators or translator devices. Mike had seen it all. The six-limbed Mabari with their shimmering exoskeletons. The amorphous Glish, who needed gravity dampeners to maintain form. Even the rare Vraxian who required methane atmospheres and special containment suits. Last day. Huh, Mike? Station controller Layla Rodriguez appeared beside him, her dark hair pulled back in the standard-issue station ponytail. Taking out the VIP group? Mike nodded, watching a cargo lifter navigate the busy dock below. 15 years of showing aliens the dangerous human frontier. Figured I'd go out with a bang. This group's different, Layla said, sliding a datapad toward him. Look at the manifest. Mike's eyebrows rose as he scanned the list. A Mabari Royal? An actual Glish academic? This is unusual. Command wants this one handled perfectly. These aren't your usual thrill-seekers. Layla's voice dropped. Word is, the Mabari Prince is considering a defense treaty. The tour is political. Mike groaned. So my retirement send-off is babysitting diplomats? Great. Hey, could be worse. Remember that Zenith celebrity who kept trying to sample your DNA? Mike shuddered at the memory. Don't remind me. His wrist comp pinged. The transport was early. Mike straightened his faded uniform jacket with the Danger Tours patch and the small embroidery of Earth with a skull superimposed. Time for one final performance. The boarding tube extended, and 5 figures emerged. Leading them was unmistakably the Mabari Prince, taller than others of his species, with an exoskeleton polished to an almost painful brilliance, its patterns indicating royal lineage. Behind him floated a Glish academic, her translucent form rippling with the knowledge patterns of a scholar. A Diraxi military veteran followed, his scales bearing ceremonial scars of past campaigns. A Trill entertainment star came next, her famous bioluminescent patterns pulsing with excitement. Last came a Zenith researcher, his 4 eyes constantly scanning, recording everything. Welcome to Frontier Station, Mike announced with practiced charm. I'm Mike Bronson, your guide into what you call the end of the galaxy. We humans just call it home. The Mabari Prince stepped forward, environment regulator humming at his waist. I am Prince Clapian of House Zendri, 4th heir to the Mabari consensus. His translator rendered his clicks and whistles into perfect standard. We seek to understand why your species thrives where others perish. Mike smiled the smile he'd perfected over 15 years. Part pride, part warning. That's what we're here to show you. The 5-day tour covers abandoned mining operations, radiation zones, and high-gravity environments. You'll experience firsthand why humans are considered the galaxy's stubborn survivors. Fascinating premise, burbled the Glish academic, her translator floating beside her amorphous form. I am Pella, xenoanthropologist. My work suggests humans evolved under unusually harsh conditions. You could say that, Mike replied, leading them toward the preparation area. Earth tried to kill us constantly. We took it personally. The Diraxi veteran barked a laugh, the sound like stones grinding together. Dorak respects warriors. Humans fight planets and win. The Trill celebrity twirled, her bioluminescence creating a small light show. Trillaria Lux 18. But everyone calls me Trill. My followers are dying to see my adventure in human space. The Zenith researcher simply nodded. Zenith Researcher Classification XB7721. You may call me 7. Mike led them to the preparation room, where environmental suits waited. First rule of human space. Our normal is your emergency. The air at our first stop is breathable for humans, but toxic to most of you. The gravity is 1.3 times Earth standard. Temperature fluctuates wildly. Prince Clapian examined his environmental suit with distaste. Primitive protection. Effective protection, Mike corrected. Now, does everyone understand the waiver they signed? This tour showcases real danger. We minimize risks, but they exist. Pella's form rippled with academic excitement. The legal documents were most illuminating about human attitudes toward danger. Mike helped them into their protective gear, checking seals and systems with practiced efficiency. As he worked, he noted the high-quality personal shields the prince carried, the military-grade scanner Dorak wore despite regulations, and the excessive recording equipment Trill had somehow smuggled in. Typical. Tourists always thought rules were suggestions. Our transport leaves in 30 minutes, Mike said. We'll visit an abandoned mining facility on asteroid MX4572. It's been defunct for 20 years. But it's a perfect example of early human expansion. As the group prepared, Mike slipped into the small office adjacent to the prep room. A worn mug sat on the desk, bearing the same slogan as the station's welcome sign, "Humans rule here." He took a moment to look at the old hologram on the wall, himself and his old Special Forces team, back when he had a different mission than showing aliens the sanitized version of human toughness. One last tour, he muttered to himself, running a hand through his graying hair. Then it's beaches and retirement. Little did he know, retirement would have to wait. The small transport shuttle rumbled as it approached the asteroid mining facility. Through the viewport, the aliens could see the massive complex carved into the asteroid's surface, all sharp angles, industrial efficiency, and human pragmatism. Solar collectors stood at odd angles, many damaged by micrometeorite impacts. Loading docks gaped open like wounds in the rocky surface. Humans established this facility 70 years ago, Mike explained, as the shuttle docked with a mechanical clunk. It was one of the first major industrial operations outside Sol system, primarily extracting rare earth elements and titanium. It was abandoned when more profitable sites were discovered. Abandoned functioning equipment? Prince Clapian sounded horrified. The waste! Cost-benefit analysis, Mike replied with a shrug. Cheaper to build new than transport old machinery. That's how humans expanded so quickly. They disembarked into a cavernous landing bay. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across neglected equipment. The air was stale but breathable for Mike. His companions relied on their environmental suits. We'll start with the processing center. Then... Mike stopped mid-sentence. Something was wrong. He scanned the bay carefully, noting scuff marks on the dusty floor that shouldn't be there. An access panel hung open where it should have been sealed. Is there a problem? Pella asked, her academic curiosity detecting his sudden alertness. Mike forced a smile. Just getting my bearings. Been a few months since I led a tour here. But, inwardly, his old training had kicked in. Someone had been here recently. Someone unauthorized. The facility was supposedly automated and sealed, with only periodic drone maintenance. Stay close together, he instructed, leading them toward the main corridor. His hand instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there. Tour guides didn't carry firearms. This place can be confusing. The group moved through the facility, Mike pointing out features of human industrial design, while his eyes cataloged more signs of intrusion. Fresh tool marks on a security door. Power routed to systems that should be dormant. How delightfully primitive, Prince Clapian remarked as they entered the main processing center, a vast chamber filled with massive machinery. My environmental regulator indicates the gravity here would crush most non-humans without protection. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world, Mike explained mechanically, his attention elsewhere. We build to withstand forces that would collapse standard galactic construction. A subtle movement in the shadows caught his eye. Without breaking his tour guide pattern, Mike maneuvered the group toward the center of the room, away from the dark corners and potential ambush points. The noise from these machines when operational was deafening, Mike continued, subtly increasing their pace. Humans can withstand sound pressures that would damage most species' sensory organs. Trill spun in excitement, her bioluminescence flickering. My followers will love this. So industrial, so authentically dangerous. That's when Mike saw it. A shadow moving with purpose. Humanoid but wrong somehow. He recognized the movement pattern. A raider, likely equipped with augmentations. Raiders were space pirates who targeted abandoned facilities for salvage, often augmented with black market cybernetics. We need to move to the next area, Mike said calmly, even as his mind raced through scenarios. The environmental controls are more stable there. Too late. A figure stepped from behind a massive ore processor, blocking their path. Humanoid, but with obvious cybernetic enhancements grafted crudely to his body. One arm ended in a plasma torch rather than a hand. His face was a patchwork of scarred flesh and metal plating. Well, the raider growled, voice distorted by a throat implant. Tourists, and a royal, from the looks of it. Lucky day. Prince Clapian's exoskeleton flared in alarm, the equivalent of a human blanching. What is the meaning of this? We paid for danger simulation, not actual confrontation. Mike stepped forward, placing himself between the aliens and the raider. This isn't part of the tour, sir. This facility is under Frontier Authority protection. The raider laughed, a horrible mechanical sound. Authority doesn't reach here anymore. Tourman. Hasn't for months. We've been stripping this place bit by bit. Mike assessed the situation rapidly. One visible raider, likely more nearby. 5 tourists with no combat experience except maybe Dorak. No weapons except whatever the raider carried and possibly Dorak's concealed blade. Mike had pretended not to notice during check-in. What do you want? Mike asked, buying time while he located the emergency exit routes. Everything they've got, the raider said, gesturing with his plasma torch arm. Starting with the Royals environmental regulator. That's premium tech. Mike felt the group shift behind him. Dorak moved slightly forward, his military training evident in his stance. Pella's amorphous form rippled with what Mike recognized as fear patterns. Trill had stopped recording, suddenly understanding the difference between simulated and actual danger. Take us to your ship, another voice called from the shadows. More raiders emerged, 3 in total, all augmented in various horrific ways. The apparent leader stepped forward, a woman with half her skull replaced by exposed circuitry. That's not happening, Mike replied calmly. This facility has automated security. Any unauthorized access to the docking bay will trigger lockdown. A lie, but a plausible one. The lead raider sneered. Then we take what we want here, starting with the Royals regulator. Mike saw his opening. The raiders were focused on Prince Clapian, whose environmental regulator was indeed valuable technology. But they hadn't noticed the small maintenance access hatch directly behind Mike, one that led to the facility's control center. There's been a misunderstanding, Mike said, subtly guiding the group backward with small hand signals. The Prince's regulator is diplomatic property. Taking it would violate at least 3 galactic accords. The raider with the plasma torch laughed. Do we look like we care about accords? No, Mike acknowledged. You look desperate. Augment addiction? The metal in your brain needs constant upgrading, doesn't it? Expensive habit. The taunt worked. The raider lunged forward angrily, swinging his plasma torch in an arc that missed Mike by centimeters. In that moment of distraction, Mike shoved the access hatch open. "Everyone in! Now!" he commanded, his tour guide demeanor vanishing, replaced by military precision. To their credit, the aliens responded instantly. Prince Clapian, despite his royal bearing, ducked into the narrow passage first, followed by Pella, who compressed her amorphous form to squeeze through. Seven and Trill scrambled after them while Dorak covered their retreat, pulling a serrated blade from his ceremonial armor. Mike slammed the hatch shut just as the plasma torch struck it, leaving a glowing red scar in the metal. The emergency bolts engaged, buying them precious minutes. "What's happening?" Prince Clapian demanded, his translator struggling to convey the correct tone of royal indignation mixed with fear. "Those are raiders," Mike explained, leading them rapidly through the narrow maintenance tunnel. "Augmented humans who live on the fringes. They're not part of the tour." "Actual danger," Pella observed, her academic detachment returning now that immediate threat had passed. "How fascinating." "Not fascinating," Mike corrected grimly. "Deadly. They want your tech, and they won't hesitate to kill you for it." Trill's bioluminescence had dimmed to near darkness. Her celebrity bravado vanished. "I thought human space was dangerous but controlled. This is real." "Human space is dangerous. Period," Mike said, reaching a junction in the tunnels. "Sometimes that danger is controlled. Sometimes it's not." Dorak grunted approval. "Finally, truth from humans." Mike checked his wrist comp, pulling up the facility schematics he'd memorized years ago. "We need to reach the control center. From there, I can contact the station and access the security systems." "If such systems still function," Seven observed quietly, speaking for the first time since the encounter. His four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep calculation. "Good point," Mike acknowledged. "Follow me and stay quiet. Sound carries in these tunnels." They moved as silently as possible, though Prince Clapian's environmental regulator hummed louder than Mike would have liked. The maintenance tunnels were cramped, designed for utility drones rather than humanoids. For Pella, it was no problem. She simply reconfigured her amorphous form to flow through the narrow space. The others struggled to varying degrees. After 10 minutes of navigating the labyrinthine passages, they reached a small access room filled with control panels. Mike quickly assessed the systems. "Bad news," he said after a moment. "Main communications are down. Someone's disabled them deliberately." "The raiders?" Trill asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mike shook his head. "Raiders aren't usually this organized. They don't disable comms before attacking." A suspicion was forming in his mind, one he didn't like. "Can you repair it?" Prince Clapian asked, his royal authority asserting itself. "Not from here," Mike replied. "But there's a backup system in the main control center. It's 3 levels up." "Then we must proceed there," Dorak stated, his military training evident in his stance. Mike considered their options. The maintenance tunnels would eventually lead to the control center, but the raiders would expect that. They needed a diversion. "Pella," Mike said, turning to the Glish academic. "Your species has natural camouflage abilities, correct?" Pella's form rippled with scholarly pride. "Indeed. Glish evolutionary adaptation allows us to blend with surroundings by manipulating surface pigmentation." "Could you move through the open facility without being detected?" Pella's form swirled thoughtfully. "Potentially, yes, though my environmental suit would remain visible." "Could you function briefly without it?" Prince Clapian interrupted. "Absolutely not. The toxin levels would cause permanent damage to a Glish physiology." "Not necessarily," Pella countered. "I've studied human environments extensively. With proper preparation, I could endure approximately 7 minutes without protection." Mike nodded. "That's all we need. There's an environmental control panel in the processing center. If you could reach it and trigger the emergency ventilation system, it would create a facility-wide distraction." Pella's form shifted to indicate agreement. "A logical strategy. I accept the risk." "I object," Prince Clapian stated firmly. As ranking member of this expedition, with all due respect, Your Highness, Mike cut in. We're no longer on an expedition. We're in a survival situation. Chain of command has changed. The prince's exoskeleton clicked in irritation, but he didn't argue further. Mike turned back to Pella. The panel is marked with a yellow hazard symbol. You'll need to enter the emergency code 5479, then activate sequence Gamma. Understood, Pella replied, her academic demeanor replaced by focused determination. Dorak stepped forward. I will create additional distraction. Raiders expect prey to hide, not attack. Mike considered this. The Doraxi veteran clearly had combat experience, but sending him alone was risky. What do you have in mind? Dorak revealed a small device hidden in his ceremonial armor. Sonic disruptor, military grade, affects human augmentation systems. Mike raised an eyebrow. That definitely wasn't on the approved items list. Dorak's scales shifted in what might have been the Doraxi equivalent of a smile. Veteran's privilege. Mike found himself respecting the alien warrior more by the minute. All right. You and Pella create the distraction. The rest of us will make for the control center. We'll rendezvous there. Trill, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. I can help too. She activated a feature on her recording equipment that projected a perfect holographic duplicate of herself. Entertainment tech. Very convincing at a distance. Mike nodded appreciatively. Perfect. Deploy that in the opposite direction from our actual route. It might split their attention further. 7. The Zenith researcher blinked his 4 eyes in sequence. I possess analysis capabilities that may assist in reactivating communications once we reach the control center. Good, Mike said, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with these aliens he'd initially written off as just another tour group. We have a plan. Let's move. They synchronized their actions with precise timing. Pella slipped out of her environmental suit, her form immediately blending with the metallic walls of the maintenance tunnel. She slithered away toward the processing center, her natural camouflage making her nearly invisible. Dorak positioned himself near a junction that would give him a clear line to the raiders' likely position, his sonic disruptor ready. Trill programmed her holographic double to move toward the docking bay, its bioluminescence set to maximum visibility. Mike led Prince Clapian and 7 through a rarely used emergency shaft, climbing upward toward the control center. The prince struggled with the physical exertion, his exoskeleton not designed for the tight vertical climbing. 15 years giving tours, Mike muttered as he helped pull the prince up a particularly difficult section. And I end up in actual combat on my last day. Your retirement plans seem premature, 7 observed dryly. A distant boom indicated that Pella had successfully triggered the emergency ventilation system. Seconds later, the disorienting pulse of Dorak's sonic disruptor echoed through the facility, followed by the pained cries of the augmented raiders as their cybernetics malfunctioned. Mike quickened their pace. That's our cue. Move faster. They emerged from the emergency shaft into a corridor just outside the control center. The facility's emergency lights had activated, bathing everything in pulsing red illumination. Alarms blared, and automated warnings echoed through the halls. Emergency protocol activated. All personnel proceed to designated safety zones. Ventilation purge in progress. The control center doors were sealed, but Mike knew the override code, another benefit of years leading tours. He punched in the sequence, and the doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. They rushed inside, Mike immediately moving to secure the entrance behind them. The control center was a large, circular room filled with monitoring stations and control panels, designed to oversee the entire mining operation. 7. See if you can get communications back online, Mike directed, moving to the security console. Prince, watch the entrance. I'll try to access the security systems. The Zenith researcher moved to the communications array. his four eyes working independently to scan different screens simultaneously. Prince Clapian took up position by the door, his royal bearing now tempered with a new awareness of genuine danger. Mike accessed the security feeds, bringing up surveillance of the facility. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. There weren't just 4 raiders. There were at least a dozen, all heavily augmented, and they moved with tactical precision that street raiders simply didn't have. "This isn't a random raider attack," Mike said grimly. "This is organized, military-grade organization." "Privateers," Prince Clapian suggested. Mike shook his head. "Worse. Look at their movement patterns. They're ex-military. Someone's leading them with tactical expertise." On one of the screens, he spotted Pella moving silently back toward the rendezvous point, her camouflage still effective despite the emergency lighting. On another, Dorak was engaged in hand-to-hand combat with 2 raiders, his military training evident as he used their augmentations against them. Trill's hologram had successfully drawn away 3 raiders, who were pursuing the false image toward the docking bay. 7. "Any luck with communications?" Mike called, not taking his eyes off the security feeds. "Systems have been physically sabotaged," the Zenith replied. "However, I have located a subspace emergency beacon. It requires manual activation from the transmission array on Level 5. Mike cursed under his breath. Level 5 was 2 levels above them, and the quickest route would take them directly through the areas where the raiders were concentrated. A new figure appeared on the security feed, and Mike's blood ran cold. A tall human, in what appeared to be modified military gear, was directing the raiders' movements. Though the image was grainy, there was something hauntingly familiar about him. Mike zoomed in on the figure's face, and his suspicions were confirmed. "Drace Blackwell," he whispered. "You know this human?" Prince Clapian asked. "Former Special Forces. We served together." Mike's mind raced through implications. He was discharged for ethical violations, went mercenary. "A formidable opponent, then," Seven observed. "He's not just here for salvage," Mike realized, the pieces falling into place. "He's after information. This facility was decommissioned, but its databases contained classified defense information. That's why comms are down. He's making sure no one interrupts his data mining." The control center door suddenly chimed with an override attempt. Someone was trying to bypass the security. "They've found us," Mike said, moving quickly to a storage locker. He punched in his emergency guide code and retrieved a standard-issue shock baton, the only weapon tour guides were authorized to carry, and only for extreme circumstances. "Prince, 7, take cover," Mike ordered, positioning himself beside the door. "When they breach, I'll engage. You 2 circle around and get to the exit on the far side." Prince Clapian's exoskeleton flared. "I will not flee while others fight." "With respect, Your Highness, you're not trained for combat," Mike replied tersely. The prince reached down and detached his environmental regulator. Immediately, warning lights flashed on his suit as it switched to emergency reserves. "My regulator contains a defensive capability. House Zendri does not send its heirs out unprotected." He manipulated a sequence of controls on the device, and it hummed with building energy. "This will generate a localized electromagnetic pulse. It will temporarily disable their augmentations, but also my life support. I calculate 4 minutes of breathable reserves afterward." Mike reassessed the royal alien with newfound respect. "That could work. 7. Can you trigger it remotely?" The Zenith nodded. "If the prince will permit integration with my analytical systems, yes." "Do it," Mike said as the door panel began to glow red from a cutting tool on the other side. "We'll need perfect timing." As they prepared, the facility's intercom suddenly crackled to life. A voice Mike hadn't heard in years filled the control center. "Mike Bronson? Retirement tour gone wrong?" Drace Blackwell's smooth, confident tone hadn't changed. "You always did have bad timing." Mike pressed the response button. "Drace, Stealing military secrets now. That's beneath even you. Drace's laugh echoed through the speakers. Not stealing. Mike. Selling. The Mabari consensus is very interested in human defense capabilities. I was planning to approach Prince Clapian's rivals with an offer, but having the prince himself here is a lovely bonus. Prince Clapian's exoskeleton clicked in anger. House Zendri would never deal with criminals. Not knowingly, perhaps, Drace replied. But politics creates strange alliances, doesn't it, Your Highness? Mike cut the connection. He's stalling. The door's almost breached. 7. Prince, ready? They nodded. The prince connecting his regulator to 7's analytical interface. Mike positioned himself to strike the moment the door opened. With a final shower of sparks, the cutting tool completed its circuit. The control center door slid open, and 3 heavily augmented raiders stepped through, weapons raised. Now, Mike shouted. 7 triggered the prince's regulator remotely. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward, washing over the raiders. Their augmentations sparked and sputtered, causing them to cry out in pain and confusion as their cybernetic enhancements failed. Mike didn't waste the opportunity. He lunged forward with a shock baton, striking the first raider with practiced precision. The man went down instantly, neuromuscular system overloaded. The second raider, despite his malfunctioning augmentations, managed to raise a crude projectile weapon. Before he could fire, Prince Clapian himself charged forward, his exoskeleton's natural hardness cracking against the raider's jaw in a surprisingly effective headbutt. The human collapsed, unconscious. The third raider turned to flee. But 7 had anticipated this. The Zenith researcher had positioned himself by the environmental controls and released a targeted burst of high-pressure steam. The raider ran directly into it, screaming as the scalding vapor enveloped him. Move, Mike ordered, checking the corridor. The EMP effect won't last long. We need to reach level 5 for the emergency beacon. Prince Clapian's environmental suit was already flashing critical warnings, his air supply diminishing rapidly after the sacrifice of his regulator. 4 minutes, he reminded them, voice strained through his translator. They raced down the corridor toward the emergency lift shaft. Behind them, more raiders were recovering from the electromagnetic disruption. Ahead, the path seemed clear on Mike's wrist comp display of the security feeds. Too clear. Wait, Mike said, holding up a hand as they approached the lift shaft. This is too easy. Drace would have this route covered. 7's 4 eyes blinked in rapid analytical succession. Logical assessment. A tactical mind would anticipate this path. Mike studied the area carefully, then spotted it. Tiny reflective devices placed at strategic points around the lift entrance. Proximity mines. Non-lethal. But they'll incapacitate us long enough for capture. Prince Clapian's breathing was becoming labored, his exoskeleton taking on a dull hue that Mike recognized as a sign of distress. 3 minutes remaining, the prince reported. Alternative route? Mike checked his wrist comp again. Maintenance shaft B7 runs parallel to this corridor. We can access it through that processing module. He pointed to a large piece of equipment against the wall. They carefully backtracked and found the access panel behind the processing module. Mike pried it open, revealing a narrow shaft barely large enough for a human to crawl through. This will be tight, Mike warned, eyeing Prince Clapian's bulky exoskeleton. I will manage, the prince replied with determination. Mike wouldn't have expected from him hours earlier. One by one, they entered the shaft, Mike leading the way with 7 in the middle and Prince Clapian struggling behind. The shaft was filthy, covered in years of industrial grime and dust that stuck to their environmental suits. Mike's wrist comp pinged with an incoming communication. He accepted it cautiously. Mike! It was Pella's voice, transmitted through the facility's internal systems. Dorak and I have secured the docking bay. Trill is with us. Her hologram technology confused the raiders long enough for us to eliminate 3 of them. Eliminate? Mike couldn't hide his surprise. Dorak is very efficient. Pella replied matter-of-factly. We have seized a raider vessel capable of short-range communication, but it's encrypted. We cannot break the security. Hold position, Mike instructed. We're heading for the emergency beacon on level 5. If we can activate it, Frontier Station will dispatch security forces. Understood, Pella acknowledged. Be advised, the human leader has deployed droids to search maintenance shafts. They appear to be equipped with thermal sensors. Mike cursed silently. Drace was thinking ahead, as always. Copy that. Bronson out. He relayed the information to Seven and the Prince. We need to move faster. Prince Clapian's translator conveyed his strained breathing. 2 minutes remaining on emergency reserves. They crawled faster through the narrow shaft, ignoring the scrapes and bruises as they bumped against metal edges and protruding bolts. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached an access panel that, according to Mike's mental map of the facility, should open onto level 5 near the transmission array. Mike paused, listening carefully. No sounds of droids or raiders. He slowly opened the access panel and peered out. The corridor was empty, bathed in the red emergency lighting. Clear, he whispered, climbing out and helping Seven, then the struggling Prince. Prince Clapian immediately collapsed against the wall, his exoskeleton now a dull gray. 1 minute, he gasped, the translator barely picking up his weakened clicks. The transmission array is 30 meters down this corridor, Mike said, supporting the Prince. Seven, can you help him? The Zenith researcher moved to the Prince's other side, his 4 arms providing additional support. Together, they hurried down the corridor toward a large door marked Communications. Mike's instincts screamed danger as they approached the unmarked transmission room. It was too perfect. The most important room in the facility. Unguarded during a tactical infiltration? Stop, he ordered just as they reached the door. Something's wrong. As if confirming his suspicion, slow applause echoed from behind them. They turned to see Drace Blackwell standing at the corridor junction, flanked by 2 heavily augmented raiders. Still sharp. Mike, Drace said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'd have been disappointed if you'd walked right into my trap. Mike kept his expression neutral, though seeing his former teammate turned mercenary sent a complex wave of emotions through him. Drace looked older, harder, with cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples and a military-grade prosthetic arm. The mining facility database isn't worth this kind of operation. Drace, Mike said, keeping himself between Drace and the aliens. What are you really after? Drace's smile widened. Always the tactician. You're right. Of course. The database was just a bonus. The real prize is the Prince's cerebral implant, the one containing the entire defensive schematic of the Mibari consensus. Prince Clapian's exoskeleton rippled in shock. How could you possibly know about that? Spies in your court, Your Highness. The same ones who suggested you take this particular tour on this particular day. Drace took a step forward. Now, your environmental system is about to fail completely. Surrender the implant, and I'll ensure you receive proper medical attention. Mike glanced at the Prince, whose breathing was now desperately labored. 30 seconds, the Prince whispered. 7, Mike said quietly. The transmission array. Can you access it remotely? The Zenith researcher's eyes blinked in sequence. Potentially. I would need a direct line of sight to the internal components. Mike nodded almost imperceptibly, then turned his attention back to Drace. Let the aliens go, Drace. This is between you and me. Drace laughed. Still playing the hero. Mike, that's what got you relegated to tour guide duty while the rest of us moved on to more lucrative opportunities. I call it having principles, Mike replied, slowly shifting his position to block Drace's view of Seven, who was subtly examining the door's control panel. Principles don't pay for neural enhancements. Drace tapped his temple, where cybernetic implants gleamed. Do you know what military-grade cognitive augmentation costs these days? Your soul, apparently, Mike shot back. Drace's expression hardened. Enough talk. The prince has seconds of air left. Hand him over, or watch him suffocate. Prince Clapian suddenly straightened, his exoskeleton clicking rapidly. House Zendri does not surrender to mercenaries. With startling speed for someone in respiratory distress, he slammed his fist against the wall panel beside him. Emergency sprinklers activated instantly, drenching the corridor. The water shorted out some of the raiders' exposed augmentations, causing them to cry out in pain and confusion. In that moment of distraction, Seven's forearms moved with precision. Two removed the access panel beside the door, while the others rewired the internal components with blinding speed. Mike didn't waste the opportunity. He launched himself at Drace, driving his shoulder into his former teammate's midsection. They crashed to the floor, grappling for advantage. Drace's augmented arm gave him unnatural strength, but Mike had always been the better close-quarters fighter. He blocked a cybernetically enhanced punch that would have shattered his skull, countering with an elbow strike to Drace's throat. Behind them, Seven called out, "Transmission initiated!" Drace snarled, realizing his window of opportunity was closing. He activated something in his cybernetic arm, and a blade extended from his wrist. He slashed at Mike, who barely rolled away in time. "You're throwing away everything for a bunch of aliens?" Drace spat, advancing with the blade. "They fear us. Mike, they call our space the end of the galaxy because they think we're monsters. Why not profit from that fear?" Mike backed up, looking for an opening. "Because proving them right helps no one." Prince Clapian had collapsed completely. His environmental system now failed. Seven was attempting to reactivate the prince's regulator while maintaining the transmission. Drace lunged again with the blade. This time, Mike wasn't quite fast enough. The edge sliced across his ribs, cutting through his tour guide uniform and drawing blood. Mike gasped in pain, but managed to grab Drace's arm, locking it into an immobilizing hold. "Principles," Mike grunted through clenched teeth, "aren't just what you stand for." He twisted harder, feeling the servos in Drace's cybernetic arm strain against the pressure. "They're what you won't fall for." With a final wrenching twist, Mike tore the cybernetic arm from its socket. Sparks and hydraulic fluid sprayed across the corridor as Drace screamed in pain and rage. Before Drace could recover, the facility's intercom crackled to life with an automated message. "Emergency transmission acknowledged. Frontier Station security forces dispatched. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. Drace's face contorted with fury. 12 minutes is plenty of time to finish this. Mike." From behind them came a new voice. "Time has expired." Dorak stood at the corridor junction, his military bearing unmistakable, a captured raider weapon in his scaled hands. Behind him floated Pella, her amorphous form rippling with determination, and Trill, whose recording equipment was now functioning as an impromptu medical scanner directed at the fallen prince. "The docking bay is secured," Dorak continued, the weapon trained steadily on Drace. "Your raiders are neutralized. Surrender is your only logical option." Drace assessed the situation with the cold calculation of a mercenary. Outnumbered, disarmed, with reinforcements on the way. The odds had shifted decisively against him. "This isn't over, Mike," he said, slowly raising his remaining hand. "The frontier is changing. Humans can't play nice with aliens forever." "Maybe not," Mike acknowledged, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "But today, we still have standards." Dorak moved forward, securing Drace with practiced efficiency. Pella and Trill rushed to Prince Clapian, whose exoskeleton had taken on an alarming gray pallor. "The prince requires immediate respiratory assistance," Seven reported, still working on the regulator. "His systems are failing." Trill surprised everyone by opening a compartment in her recording equipment. "Entertainment industry secret," she explained, extracting what appeared to be a small medical kit. "Celebrities always need emergency supplies." She removed a vial of clear fluid and a delivery system. "Universal respiratory support. Works on most oxygen-breathing species. Mike watched in amazement as the celebrity administered the treatment to the prince with practiced hands. Within moments, Prince Clapian's exoskeleton began to regain some of its luster. "Where did you learn that?" Mike asked, as he helped secure Drace. Trill's bioluminescence pulsed with what might have been embarrassment. "I wasn't always an entertainment star. Medical school dropout?" Pella's form rippled with what Mike had come to recognize as amusement. "It seems we all contained hidden depths." The next 12 minutes passed in a blur of activity. They secured the remaining raiders, stabilized Prince Clapian, and established a defensive perimeter around the transmission array. When Frontier Station security forces finally arrived, they found not a group of terrified tourists, but a cohesive team that had successfully repelled a military-grade mercenary operation. Commander Davis of Frontier Security couldn't hide his surprise as Mike delivered his report. "A tour guide and 5 aliens took down Drace Blackwell? The same Drace Blackwell who's been on our most wanted list for arms dealing and espionage?" Mike shrugged, wincing as the medic treated his side wound. "Turns out tourists are full of surprises." The commander shook his head in disbelief. "Well, Bronson, I'd say you've earned that retirement. Though Security Command might have other ideas once they hear about this." 3 days later, back at Frontier Station, Mike sat in the observation lounge, watching ships come and go through the giant viewport. His retirement paperwork lay beside him, still unsigned. Prince Clapian approached, his exoskeleton once again gleaming with royal luster, though now bearing a few scars that hadn't been there before. "Guide Bronson," he said formally, his translator rendering perfect standard. Mike stood, offering the customary bow to Mabari royalty. "Your Highness, I'm glad to see you recovered." "Thanks to you and our unexpected team," the prince acknowledged. "The Mabari consensus has been fully briefed on the events at the mining facility. They were illuminating." "How so?" Mike asked. "For generations, we have called human territory the end of the galaxy. A warning to our people about the dangers that lie in this region of space." The prince's exoskeleton rippled in what Mike now recognized as thoughtful contemplation. "We believed humans thrived in harshness because you were, yourselves, harsh, predatory, dangerous." Mike waited, sensing there was more. "I now understand we were only partially correct." Prince Clapian continued. "Humans are dangerous, yes, but dangerous in defense of principles as often as in pursuit of gain. That is a distinction my people have failed to appreciate." "High praise coming from Mabari royalty," Mike observed. "Not praise, reassessment." The prince extended a formal data crystal. "The consensus has authorized me to offer you a position. We wish to establish an academy for non-humans who seek to understand and navigate human space. We require someone who understands both worlds to lead it." Mike stared at the crystal, then back at his unsigned retirement papers. "I was planning on beaches and quiet." "You were bored," the prince corrected, with surprising insight. "That is why you took risks on your final tour. Why you noticed the raiders before anyone else could. Your instincts seek purpose, not retirement." Before Mike could respond, the others arrived, Pella floating serenely, Dorak walking with military precision, Seven observing everything with his 4 analytical eyes, and Trill creating a small light show with her bioluminescence. "The band's all here," Mike remarked with a smile. "We have come to offer farewell," Pella explained, "and gratitude." Dorak nodded. "You fought with honor. Rare quality." "My followers are obsessed with the edited highlights I released," Trill added, her patterns glowing with excitement. "I've never had such viewing numbers." Seven blinked his eyes in sequence. "The experience was enlightening. My research will benefit greatly." Mike looked at them. 5 aliens from different worlds, different cultures, who had become something more than tourists under his guidance. They had become a team, perhaps even friends. He picked up the prince's data crystal, turning it over in his hands. "This academy of yours, would it involve field trips?" Prince Clapian's exoskeleton shifted in what might have been a smile. "Extensive ones, to the most challenging environments in human space." Mike glanced out the viewport one last time, seeing the stars that marked the boundary between what humans called home and what aliens called the end of the galaxy. Then he looked back at his unexpected team and made his decision. "Well," he said, pocketing the crystal and tearing up his retirement papers, "someone has to teach them how to survive out here." As they stood together, looking out at the frontier that separated their worlds, Mike thought about the sign that had greeted them days earlier. "Welcome to human space, where humans rule." Perhaps it was time for a new sign, one that welcomed rather than warned. After all, the end of the galaxy was just the beginning of understanding.